Buenos días, buenas tardes o buenas noches. Yo soy el Descorchador y hoy vamos a hablar de mapa vinícola en un vino con. Bienvenido a todos. Estamos hoy con Steve DeLong. Es una persona muy importante en el mundo del vino. Ha producido los mapas de referencia para los profesionales y para los aficionados en el mundo del vino. Entonces, qué sorpresa, vamos a hablar de mapa. La entrevista entonces está en inglés, pero con subtítulos en español. Entonces, que disfruten. Okay, so let's switch to English. Steve, what a great honor to have you on this show. Thanks again for taking the time. Could you please
Thank you.
tell our audience who you are?
Okay, I'm Steve DeLong. I am an architect, and I got into making maps, wine maps, probably 12 years ago. And looking at what was available at the time, it was really poor, actually. I mean, you had Hugh Johnson and stuff like that, but the overall, there was a very, I couldn't even believe it. It was an opportunity to actually make some maps, and so I've continued doing it, and it kind of goes. It's kind of like architecture because I'm drawing plans, but plans of vineyards instead, or regions, and I really enjoy doing it, and I'm just continuing to do it and getting better at it, and I've pretty much mapped the entire world, with a few exceptions.
We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
You don't have any map of Colombia, so.
No, I have a map of the entire South America. But I bet Colombia probably has a few vineyards, just like
Very few.
parts of Europe, like Norway and Belgium, places like that. They actually have vineyards, but not really mappable regions, just little spots.
Okay, and so did you came to map from the wine or to wine from the map?
No, I came through. So it's my wife Deborah and we got married in 2001, and we were both very interested in wine, and we made this thing called the wine grape varietal table, and that was our first project. So it was like this graphic sort of periodic table of wine grapes that has actually sold a lot. So you might see it in shops or in places like that, and we're updating it actually now, and expanding it. But that was the start in terms of graphics. It's like, okay, do things graphically, use their talents as she's a designer and I'm an architect, and just see how that works. And we've gone from there. So from that chart, went to tasting notebooks. So I was going to do a tasting chart, but it's like, okay, might as well do a tasting notebook because there weren't really any good ones out there. So did a tasting notebook and then went to maps and have continued doing that. So.
Okay, I thought maps were your first love, but no, you first did the table. I didn't know that. Amazing.
Yeah.
Great. So let's go deep in the topic of maps. So my next question is, what is the country or region map you haven't done yet and that you would like to do next?
Well, I'm going to do one of the entire United States, and that's actually not that difficult anymore because the government just released all of the files. I mean, in the way that different countries have different ways of making maps, and most of them are just legal descriptions of boundaries, just written out, saying like, go to this point, this mountaintop, to this place, to this, and that's this. And surprisingly, they had never drawn them out, or they had drawn them and they're like in a file cabinet somewhere in Napa or Ohio or some place. But they find this year they've released that. So it's not, so that makes it not a very difficult map to make. And I wanted to make that, and I was working on this project with UC Davis to actually do the same thing. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, they just released this. And so you have this Davis team working on it for years. And so I was like, okay, so that's one place. There's also Georgia.
Yeah, interesting.
And there's, and actually the U.S. map will be a map of Canada, all the Canadian regions, and as well as Mexico.
Yeah, so North America, yeah.
So all of North America. So Mexico is kind of a weird one because I've seen maps online where it appears that Mexico, the entire country, is a wine region, which is not true at all.
Yeah, no, well, it can be true in a point of view, but if you want to learn about the wine, it's not enough. Yeah.
It's not that helpful. I mean, lots of places are like that. Like actually, Chile and Argentina don't. Their regions are defined very, very broadly. So where the vineyards are is not really that helpful. It's just like a political map. So it's like if you just say, okay, I'm just going to take all of Mendoza as a wine region. It's like, okay, but where do they grow the wine in Mendoza? Because Mendoza is huge. So.
Okay, interesting. So your next trip would be in the US, but okay.
Well, there's also Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia.
Which is a very interesting. It's funny because actually I try to sell these and the more obscure they get, the less they sell, and you can see like the big ones like Spain, France, Italy, California, very, very popular. But then you go to, surprisingly, South Africa is the worst one.
Really?
It's like no one's interested in South Africa. So I feel really sorry for South Africa.
The oldest of the new world, and it's not selling.
It is the oldest. It's practically an old world country. Yeah.
And so do you travel to the country when you're doing maps to check or to see for yourself what is going on, or?
When I first started, I did that, but now not so much because it's a lot about satellite imagery, and it's very hard to get good information on the ground. You'd have to be there years to get to actually drive around and find out enough. So I try to go to places, but I've never been to South America, and I've never been to South Africa either. So those are definitely on my list.
Okay. So let's kind of generalize a little bit. Could you tell us what is the process that you have when you do a new map? So you told us a little bit. So you don't travel there. You work a lot on existing maps, but I mean, surely you have many things that you do to reassure the public that you do the best map that exists.
Right. No, so it just starts with the wine laws. You just research the wine regulations and the laws, and once you get that, that's pretty much it. And certain countries have very, very well defined regions. Like actually Italy has very, very well defined regions, even though I made the first map of Italy, comprehensive map. There was a guy named Burton Anderson who did a wine atlas in the 90s that was fairly comprehensive, but it was missing a lot. And so this was like the first ever map done of all these regions that have been specifically defined. And you thought, like, why didn't someone do this already? And it was really surprising to me that so many places would announce a new region in Italy, and especially when they were doing the EU consolidation in 2012, everyone was trying to get these new regions in, but they would define them specifically, but they wouldn't actually produce a map, it would just be text.
Yeah, that's what I was
And
going to say. You say I'm going to look for the wine laws, but the wine law there's no map. It's just writings. So it's hard to translate
right,
that to a map. Yeah.
yeah. So translating those into maps, like in Italy, has over 400 regions, so it's very, very dense and difficult, and they're overlapping, and it's a little bit crazy, but it is very, very well defined. Some other places are not very well defined, just like South America. New Zealand is they're starting to become more defined, and they've initiated this thing where you pay a certain fee and you can start your own region. And
Okay, I didn't know that.
and no, but they have to. They check you out. And, I mean, it's
You can tell us now. There is a Steve DeLong region somewhere.
right. Yeah. Yeah, it's right.
We'll have to investigate all your maps to find it.
Yeah, just put it in. Paid my money, put it in. Yeah, but no, it's interesting because so New Zealand maps. If you see most New Zealand wine maps are just look like a political map because they're defined that broadly, and you have weird things like the area around Christchurch, which has almost no in Canterbury has almost no vineyards, and it almost looks as big as Marlborough, and you're like, those are completely different. Marlborough is carpeted with vineyards, and these have like a few. So it's like there's so many weird things. So going into a place like New Zealand, it's a lot of satellite imagery, looking up where different things are, and just checking through Google Satellite, and checking with winemakers, seeing what the vineyards are, and it's very, very time consuming to do that. But it makes better maps. Even those ones are the most difficult to make. They probably sell the least in terms of.
It's a work of patience.
It's a labor of love in a way. A lot of this stuff, you're not going to get rich making wine maps, I can assure you. So.
A lot of wine producers say the same when I interview them.
Yeah.
Okay. No, very interesting. And in terms of design, after that's the easy part for you because it's kind of what you do. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's it. No, it's the design takes a lot of attention because there are map making programs that automate a lot of stuff, but it's like you have to know the program, and there's a lot of hand manipulation and graphic design in terms of like making it work and making everything clear, and some places like Italy, it's very, very difficult. You have so many overlapping regions, and I'm still not that happy with the Piemonte region on our map. And it's like, but I haven't seen anyone do a good one. I've seen a few in actually that Massignetti, he's a map maker, does very specific maps, and they're beautiful maps, but they are just of, say, Barolo or Barbaresco, and so that's a completely different focus than taking the entire Piemonte and making sense of it.
Okay, no, that's great. So that leads me to my next question. It's perfect. How do you select the information you put on map? Because you gave us the perfect example. In New Zealand, you have the Christchurch region, which is huge and almost produced no wine in comparison to Marlborough. So, of course, the idea would be to put in the same map the quantity, the producing quantity. But I mean, why this info and not another? Why the altitude and not the climate? Why the soil composition and not, I don't know. Well, there's so many information you can put on a map. So how do you select the one you're going to put on a map?
Well, there's not much about soil. I was going to do this thing that was a soil based or terroir based things of the terroirs of the world, but I found it extremely difficult.
Yeah,
because there's so many different soil types, and it's very, very, even in one region, you could have like 3 different types of soil, or much more than that. But so I don't put soil types and things like that. It's mostly temperature, forests, things, the most pretty much ordinary things that are on a map, just like rivers and all of that stuff. And those are the things that define the regions more. In terms of those, say in New Zealand, they do get expanded more in a way. Say because to make any sense, some of the regions, say just like Canterbury, has little spots of regions on them. If I really was accurate, you wouldn't even see them. They would be smaller than a city dot.
Okay.
So the New World does get. You have to add some, take some leeway and put in areas that are almost potential vineyards, because the areas are too small. And so you sort of expand it to sort of potential areas of vineyards using soil types. And it doesn't say the soil type, but you take
you use this information to
and you extrapolate that.
Okay.
Because you say the old world has 77% of all the world's vineyards, and it's in a very concentrated area, Europe mainly, and the New World is just 23%. So it's very, very sparse comparatively. But I mean, there are areas like Mendoza, Uca Valley, which are just carpeted with vineyards, but those are few and far between.
Okay, so if I understood well what you were saying, finally, depending on the country, you use different parameters to extract them and use them to do a map, which does not show the type of soil of the climate, but you use those information to do how can we call it, a legal map of the zones or something like that, if I understood well. Yeah.
Well, a lot of them will show the legal zone in a lighter outline, and then it'll show where the vineyards are.
Okay.
So that's so you show a little bit of both, but most of in those New World regions, they're just so vague. You can see that, just like the outline is huge, and then the vineyards are just a few little pieces.
And how do you decide when your map is over? I mean, you can always go more in detail. I mean, I don't know, if you study Barolo or Brunello di Montalcino, you go deeper, and you can find that the producer on the east side is different on the west side, and because of the altitudes, because of something. So there's no end of how detailed you can go. So how do you decide that's it? This is the published one.
It's based on the resolution of the map. So most of these are full country maps, and they'll have detailed regions, and so it's pretty much enough detail to make it useful for an educator. That's pretty much my criteria, and because you can get way too detailed. They can't. Well, maybe not too detailed. You can get incredibly detailed, and that's really the future of wine maps, where they will probably be online, all of them, and you'll just keep zooming to incredible levels of information. There's a few people tried that, but it's too big. I think there's a vineyards.com. They've done a good job in Napa Valley, but it's hard to cover the entire world, though, with that detail.
Well, you need to find a partnership with Google, so you can make a Google map of wine and you can zoom in like they
Yeah,
do.
well,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's actually is not that difficult. The difficult thing is actually populating with all the information.
Yeah, that's true.
Because you go down to, like, say, France is you have the overall regions. They're defined by commune, and then when you start zooming down, there's a vineyard registry, and that's what it makes. So your average map of Burgundy that you've seen, those the
Yeah.
Pinot and Poupon maps, which are beautiful. They're ultra specific, and those are based on the ownership of the various plots. And
Yeah.
those have been done since the monks in the Middle Ages, but they do a great job of that. But to do that sort of detail in Burgundy with the rest of the world, you need a lot of people working on it.
Yeah, Burgundy is kind of one of a kind. Yeah, I have the
Yeah.
Jasper Morris Master of Wine book, which is so detailed. Every page is a small map, and you can check all the producers. That's amazing. But yeah, he spent, I don't know, 30 years there to do that. So okay, no, that's incredible. So let's go back a little bit, and I've seen that you work with your own publishing company. Why this choice? Why not working with a good one, a big one, a famous one? I don't know. Is there a specific reason, or?
Well, there aren't that many publishing companies of wine information, and the ones that was it the Octagon Group in the UK. I mean, they publish a few things, and I don't think it's not a big enough market. That's the problem for me.
Okay.
So I've been approached by people, but it's not a good deal. It's like, I know so many wine writers that make no money, and
Okay.
I don't know. It's funny because the publishing industry has changed a lot, and so it's like you go and you have to promote your own thing. You have to write it and do everything. You go like, well, what are you guys doing? But they do have distribution networks.
Yeah,
and things
that's
like
the
that.
main thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
must have been
Which
hard
is
to
changed,
to start your own publishing company, no?
It's not that hard.
Not that hard? Okay. I'll think about it then.
Okay.
Okay, wonderful. So let's talk, before going back to wine, you will see why. Let's talk to map. Let's talk about wine. And what is for you the most important parameter to define a wine? Of course, you will tell me all of them are important, but I mean in order of importance. I mean, I don't know, the terroir, the winemaker, the type of yeast, the soil, the climate. There's so many parameters. So, what is for you the key parameter for wine?
Oh, I definitely think it's the winemaker.
Winemaker, okay.
Because you go to any region, and if you do a blind tasting of whatever, Chino in Loire Valley, like you go, okay, there'll be so many different types of the same wine, and you're like, is these all from the same region? And it's like, and a good winemaker can make stuff in a bad year, and you can, like, I trust the certain winemakers who, like, you know, and I go back to them and drink their wines, and that's kind of probably bad because when you're getting older, you start to funnel your attention into these sort of things, and you stop looking at new things. But I think it's definitely not the. I mean, it is everything, but I think that is the most important thing in the very end.
A winemaker. I find it interesting because what your patient is doing wine maps, but on the wine maps you cannot show the winemakers.
No,
So
yeah.
we could think Well, Steve might be the guy who thinks that's the, I don't know, the altitude or the orientation or something like that is more important. But no, you think the winemakers, isn't that like a paradox with the maps?
Yeah, it is. So that's why it would be good to have like do it online, and then you could just show all the winemakers. But that's a very, very detailed
Yeah.
and huge
Inside of
undertaking.
every map, we should do what it wouldn't be a map, but it's more a table. Your first love, a table of the winemakers, a periodic table of the winemakers of every denomination. Yeah, what a work!
Yeah, no, I was thinking because like, but then if you start doing, I was thinking like doing iconic winemakers and things like
Okay.
that. But then the problem with that is do have in Europe you have iconic winemakers, and pretty much everyone would go, yeah, these guys are what Chateau Palmer, and it's like, yeah, there we go.
Okay.
They're, um, but when you get to the New World, everyone would be computing like, what is that? Like in Oregon, is it Erie or Archery Summit or something like that? Who is an iconic winemaker? I don't know. So that would be very, very difficult. But
Yeah, and I think even in the old world, the tendency is more like that. So now you have people that are used to be iconic, and most of the consumers say no. I mean, I prefer to enter in the debate, biodynamic wines or something like that. So they really avoid even the iconic wines because it does not fit their ideas of the wine. So yeah, it might be very difficult to spot the iconic, non-debatable wine producer. You're right.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, just like DDA Dagno in Sancerre. Those his wines, his son now makes them, but they didn't taste anything like Sancerre, and he just said because he ripens his grapes. It's like, so you have these weird things. So like, what is a typicity in a region? And you have people like that say, well, it's because they're making the wine wrong. And so what is classic? It's pretty hard to define, especially nowadays.
I have one question about that at the end. We'll see. Okay. So you told me earlier that something very interesting, that you define when to stop working on a map when it's useful for one educator, right? And
Right.
and that's very interesting because at the same time you told me you were launching a new set of wine, less detailed, more I don't like the word basic, but maybe that's basic information. So
Right.
more or less, if I
I know.
understood well, you will do one set of wine for educators and one set of wine for more wine lovers or something like that.
Something like, yeah. So they're much more edited. It's like the word curated is probably pretty horrible, but that's
Which word? Sorry.
Curated.
Okay. Yeah.
It's gone into like mainstream shopping. It's like, oh, there's our curated collection of whatever housewares, and it's like, oh, it's okay, it's too much. But it is sort of an edited. I'm using the word concise.
Concise. Exactly. Yeah.
So you can go through Italy, and instead of like going through the 400 regions and the almost 100 IGPs, they're not that many that you really, really need to know, and that most people will want to know. And it's, I think, a lot more useful, and it's probably not as overwhelming. And a lot of it's funny because I think a lot of people just buy the maps to hang on the wall and then look at it and refer to it every once in a while. And so if it's overloaded with information, it becomes a little bit difficult. So that's what I do have like a little map. So that's what it. But Spain is
Yeah. Well,
a
you,
area.
you send me also an extract of Italy. I don't. If you allow
Yeah.
me, I will put it on screens to show. Yeah. If
Oh,
it's
sure.
okay
Yeah,
for
that's
you.
great.
Yeah. Perfect.
And so that it's funny because the Spain one is not that edited because
Okay.
Spain is very, very clear. They don't overlap their regions that much. So it's like okay, that's
Yeah, that's true.
it. So
That's true.
it looks almost the same as the other map, maybe with a different sort of hill treatment and stuff like that. But the Italy map is, I think, much more useful for your average person, a concise map.
But I totally agree with what you say. As a wine educator, sometimes when I talk about the Loire Valley, for example, to the young students, I just simplify it. I do a map with four separate parts, and I say, okay, this one is mainly white wine, this one is mainly pink wine, and this one is mainly the Cabernet Franc, and yeah, so
Right. Yeah.
so they can memorize something. If there is too much information, you lose the focus, and they don't memorize anything. So yeah, no, for me it's a great news that you will do a new set of wine concise map.
Okay.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. Okay, let's go a bit around the philosophy of education. Do you think the way you do maps, impact the way people learn about about wine? Sorry.
I think wine has so much to do with maps. So it's so connected to different places. It's such a weird when you really think about wine, like it's almost like you're taking a little sample from all these different places in the world. It's like I'm going to fill this little vial with juice, and like you can drink it anywhere in the world. So like if you want to have Provençal cuisine, you can sort of make it from local ingredients, but you can actually get the wine that actually came from the place and drink it with it. And I think that's pretty amazing. And so there's always that connection with places and wine. So I think, yeah, it really is very important to look at maps, I think, as in terms of wine. Where it's from is very, very important.
Well, yeah.
It's like that's kind of a cliche.
No, I mean, that's interesting. Okay, but let's say I don't know if you were doing maps, example with the maps of something maybe absurd. So a maps of the different type of yeast that you can find on the vineyards. Maybe if people were looking at those maps while tasting wine, they would have a different conception about wines. You know what I mean? Instead of where it comes from.
Right. No, that's yeah, absolutely. That could definitely affect the way they think about things, and that's there are people who've done maps of the different types of alcohol in Europe that I found pretty interesting. And it's like you have the wine area, and then you have that was traditionally the wine area, and I think it's a little bit surprising for some people, like Austria and Hungary, or wine. Traditionally, that was the beverage of choice, and so they're not like Germany. Germany was a beer place, and sort of northern France, and then you get to Holland and Belgium,
Yeah, exactly.
and England,
yeah.
And then you get further up, and you get to the spirits, and you get Scotland and Russia and Norway and Finland and those definitions. And I've also wanted to do a map of foods where you have
That's what I
the
was going to
butter
say.
and the olive oil line. Where is the butter and the olive oil border?
Yeah, like the main cuisine, and put a wine map on it. That would be amazingly
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So
Wonderful. So, perfect. So, just to announce another thing that you have I think we said it, but you are launching a new set of maps. And I don't know. It will be at the same time you will start the concise maps, or it will be later on.
The consent, those will be at the same time.
At the same time, so.
It'll start with the concise ones. Will just start with 3, just the 3 big ones.
So I guess Spain, France, and Italy. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Those are by far the biggest, and then move to like California and the U.S. And but the box set of maps is being shipped now, and I don't even have one. I've just seen it.
Really? Oh.
In videos, so I'm really like.
Yeah,
very excited to see that. But
okay, yeah, you cannot travel to China to see how things are going. For the people who watch us in few years, we are right now in a big confinement of 2020, so we cannot travel. We have to wait and see.
Oh, yeah, it was great because I was supposed to go to China in March, so when everything was going to ship out, and so no, definitely not possible.
Okay. And as we are, to finish about that, please, I will put a link in the description, but you will see the new website with all the new features and the new maps, all the wine fanatics are craving about, so that will be perfect. Thanks for the work you're doing for us. That's very appreciated. So we were talking about China. For the moment, if I'm not mistaken, you don't have a map of China.
No.
And that's one of the main producing country now. They do not export a lot, so I was surprised that I was thinking you might say China when I asked you for your next map. But so could you tell us if it's something you want to do, or for the moment it's too vague to I don't know.
No, actually, if you do a search online for a wine map of China, there is somebody in China that's made a pretty decent map. Okay. And for me to make one would be better than theirs would be very, very difficult, because they don't really have established wine laws. They're just starting to. Mm-hmm. So it's like, in terms of defining regions, I don't even know how this person got it. Maybe from satellite data, somewhere. But it looked pretty cool. I think a lot of the wine, though, is stuff that people wouldn't want to drink. And it's kind of like in some of the world's most grown grapes are in Argentina. Mm-hmm. And they're Crianza and these like grapes that no one drinks outside of Argentina. Mm-hmm. And it's just like in the U.S. there's some like muscadines, like Scuppernong and stuff like that. They're local things that you might drink, but you'll never see them outside of the country. And I think in China you have a lot of that.
Okay.
And so they're native grape varieties, and so the ones that people are interested in drinking, it's usually like the sort of the French winemakers, mm-hmm. guys like you that go to China, Jamaica.
Okay, no, that's perfect. And I think in few years you need to be prepared to do a map of China. I mean, that's the same with the UK. Right now they're producing wines, so we could do a map of the UK, but it's the same. Maybe wait a bit so it settled down, it gets structured, and then it's better to do a map when it's like it's not moving all the time. Yeah?
No, yeah, because it does. It has to get critical mass, and that's
critical mass exactly.
When I first moved here, there was a guy. He's a master of wine here. Stephen Skeleton wrote this book, the wines of England and Ireland, and it was like, wow. And so the first thing I did was open where's the Irish vineyards, yeah. and it was just one page about some pub that had a little vineyard next to it, like a tiny little plot, and that was it. That was all of it. It was like, okay, and they stopped making wine. It was like they don't have just cross it off the.
Yeah, exactly.
So it does need critical mass. And
when you update a book and you need to change the title, there's a problem.
Right.
Okay, well, perfect. Thanks a lot. So I have 4 more questions. One question of chance. I mean, you will select a question totally by chance. One fun question, and actually there's only 3, and one educational question. Okay. So the chance question is a list of, core question or controversial themes. You know. So you will pick one by chance, and you will see if you have a good one or something more complicated. So please tell me a number between 1 and 5, please.
4.
4? Okay. Oof. Okay. So. Well, if we're talking about controversial, what is your opinion on biodynamic wines?
I think biodynamics is, I think Rudolf Steiner was a sort of an accidental genius. And I mean, he was in so many different things and sort of intuitively got some things, but he was a crackpot as well. So you have the things like bearing the horn with the silica in the vineyard and spreading it around so you get the crystals of light on everything. And I think that goes a little bit too far and obsessive. But I think the great thing about biodynamics is that when you have that level of obsession, it almost guarantees that it's going to be good. It's very hard to have a bad biodynamic wine unless they didn't use sulfur and it went off. You know, it's like, or sulfites, I'm sorry.
That was another question, but we...
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Right, let's go to the fun question then. If you were a food and wine pairing, what would it be?
If I was a food... Oh my God, that's harder than... I think I would be... This might sound a little bit weird, but I'd be Bouillabaisse and Provençal rosé.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, perfect.
Sounds a little metrosexual. I don't know. It sounds pretty weird, but that okay.
No. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, no, perfect. And finally, the educational question. So, do you have a book or a except of your work, for of course, but I mean a book or I don't know, a podcast or something you want to recommend for someone who starts getting interested into wine?
Well, if there's the book I really love is the Wine Grape book that's by it's Jancis Robinson and Julia Harding and Jose Villamuz, and that's a fantastic book. But it's a really weird, thick book about grape varieties. So it might not be the thing for people just getting into wine, but that is, I love that book. So, I mean, the first, because I think that there's so many books that are very difficult in terms of getting into wine. I found like Karen McNeil's The Wine Bible pretty good, even though it's a sort of a funny.
To start,
it's not the Wine Koran or something like that. It's a weird name. But
no, well, Jancis Robinson has this way of writing that is perfect because you can enter the book. She's very good with that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Muchas gracias a todos por su atención. Espero que hayan disfrutado de esta entrevista. Y bueno, hasta la próxima para una nueva entrevista de Un Vino con.